Hey guys, tonight we drift east to a place where tradition meets trillions. We're going to Japan, the land of the rising sun, to watch a quiet drama unfold. A drama that involves a new leader, a massive debt pile, and a choice that could shake the global financial system. But don't worry, there's no yelling here. Just the gentle hum of the economy preparing for sleep. Welcome to Midnight Macroeconomics, where we break down the latest, complex economic news into a compelling narrative designed to soothe you to sleep and help you follow the money. Before we get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft white noise. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Part 1, The Ghost of Ambition. Our story begins with a choice. Not a choice for a late-night snack, but a massive choice for the world's third-largest economy. Japan has a new leader, Sanae Takaichi, and immediately the financial world held its breath. The fear in the markets wasn't new. It was a ghost from a decade ago, the ghost of Abenomics. The former Prime Minister, Shinzo Abe, launched a famous economic policy that was aggressive and ambitious. Think of it like this. Japan's economy had been sick for years, stuck in a deflationary loop. Deflation is the opposite of inflation. It means prices are falling over time. This sounds great, right? Cheaper goods. But if prices are always falling, people stop buying because they expect everything will be cheaper tomorrow. This freezes the economy. Abenomics was the radical cure. 3 giant arrows aimed at the problem. Aggressive monetary easing, basically, printing a lot of money. Massive fiscal stimulus, also called government spending. And structural reforms, meaning making the system work better. Now with Sanae Takaichi, a leader often called a mini Abe, the market fears the return of those 2 aggressive arrows, too much stimulus and no tightening. They feared that Takaichi would open the national checkbook and start spending without a plan. But Japan in the 2020s is not the Japan of the 2010s. The economy, much like a person waking up from a long sleep, is finally showing signs of life. Headline inflation, the overall change in the price of a basket of goods, has been over 2% for 3 years. So the old Abe-style medicine might now be an overdose. Takaichi faces a policy trilemma, a classic problem in economics. It says a country can only achieve 2 of these 3 things. An independent monetary policy, that is, the central bank does what it wants, political stability, no major political chaos, and credible fiscal stimulus, usually points to big, trustworthy government spending. In Japan's current environment, one of these 3 must give way. Part 2, The Tale of 2 Prime Ministers. To understand the choice Takaichi faces, we have to look outside of Japan to a short, disastrous experiment in the United Kingdom, and a more cautious success story in Italy. This is the heart of the drama, the Truss Moment versus the Meloni Moment. The Truss Moment, the cautionary tale. Imagine you need to do some light gardening, so you grab a chainsaw. That was Liz Truss's time as UK Prime Minister. In late 2023, Truss announced a bold, unfunded fiscal stimulus. Think of stimulus as the government injecting money into the economy to get things moving. And unfunded means they didn't explain where the money was coming from, essentially saying, "We'll spend it now, figure out the bill later." The financial markets reacted like a nervous crowd in a theater. They panicked. They sold off gilts, the UK's government bonds, and the sterling, the UK currency, plunged. Investors lost confidence overnight, forcing the Bank of England, their central bank, to step in and stabilize things. The experiment failed dramatically, and Truss was quickly out of office. Her legacy is a global cautionary tale about what happens when ambition ignores reality. The Meloni Moment, the pragmatic pivot. Now look at Giorgia Meloni in Italy. She came into office with a similar populist, big-spending rhetoric. The markets were prepared for another Truss-style shock, especially given Italy's own history of debt issues. But Meloni did something crucial. She toned down her approach. She opted for more pragmatic budget management to reassure both the financial markets and her European Union partners. Her restraint helped stabilize Italian bond spreads. It is the extra interest rate Italy has to pay compared to a super-safe country like Germany and maintain investor trust. Meloni's choice was to be a disciplined conservative, avoiding a political and financial meltdown. This brings us back to Japan. Which path will Sanae Takaichi choose? The reckless ambition of Truss or the pragmatic pivot of Meloni? Part 3, the Japanese constraint. The evidence suggests Takaichi is leaning heavily toward the Meloni-style pragmatism. And this isn't just a political choice, it's a structural necessity. Constraint 1. Political reality. Takaichi's party, the LDP, is in a fragmented political landscape. Their long-standing coalition ended, and their new alignment leaves them just shy of a majority in both chambers of the National Diet, Japan's parliament. This makes it incredibly difficult to pass those sweeping, multi-trillion yen spending packages that would alarm the bond market. Furthermore, Takaichi has already pivoted to a message of responsible fiscal spending. She signaled this intention loudly by appointing known fiscal conservatives, like Taro Aso and Shunichi Suzuki, to key financial roles. This is the ancient political art of institutional reassurance. Constraint 2. The debt illusion. When we look at Japan's debt, the number is terrifying. At 236% in 2024, Japan's debt-to-GDP ratio, the total government debt compared to the value of everything the country produces in a year, is one of the highest in the world. If any other country had this number, the financial markets would have already had a nervous breakdown. But Japan is different. Why? It's because of Japan's unique self-funded structure. Over 90% of Japan's debt is held domestically. Think of the government debt as a massive IOU. In the UK, during the Truss crisis, most of their IOUs were held by nervous foreign investors. But in Japan, the IOUs are held by Japanese banks, pension funds, and households. This self-funding is a massive buffer. It means Japan is insulated from the sudden, catastrophic volatility that countries reliant on foreign capital, like the UK, face. Japan is the world's largest net creditor, meaning its external assets are far greater than its liabilities, a financial fortress with a reserve of around $3.7 trillion in external assets. Japan's domestic financial assets, the collective savings of all its households, are nearly double the national debt. It's like a person having a massive mortgage, but also having twice that amount sitting in a savings account. Part 4, the Rebalancing Act. Takaichi is expected to thread the needle to perform a delicate balancing act. We'll see a supplementary budget in the near future, aimed at reinforcing domestic resilience. This is targeted stimulus, meaning a surgical injection of money, not a reckless flood. It's meant to support a steady recovery in things like household consumption and capital expenditures, the spending on things like factories and equipment. Even the spike in Japanese bond yields after Takaichi's win. The 10-year Japanese government bond, JGB, yields climbed to a 17-year high, is likely an exaggerated market reaction. The overall debt is actually projected to fall by 14% by 2030. The financial market's nervousness, in this case, seems to be a case of reading the news and forgetting the context. The Bank of Japan, a slow ascent. What about monetary policy? The market fears Takaichi will force the Bank of Japan, BOJ, the central bank, to keep interest rates low. But again, the pragmatism is likely to win. Takaichi appears to favor a cautious, data-dependent approach. They'll move slowly, especially given Japan's unique inflation dynamics. For example, the sharp rise in food prices was partly due to a localized rice crisis, a temporary supply shock, not a sign of the economy overheating. This means the BOJ might be behind the curve for a long time. That's economist speak for keeping interest rates lower than where they should be to curb inflation. But this slow approach also means no sudden market-shaking moves. A rate hike is likely around the turn of the year, but the pace will stall when the policy rate approaches a psychological barrier of 1%. The yen's global anchor. Finally, the Japanese yen. The dollar-yen exchange rate has been climbing, hovering closer to 155. But the yen's movement is now driven less by Takaichi's domestic policies and more by the U.S. Federal Reserve, the Fed. The yen screens as materially cheap, meaning it's valued lower than what it should be based on long-term economic strength. As the U.S. easing cycle, the Fed eventually cutting interest rates, begins, the yen is expected to gradually strengthen, heading towards a fair value near 135 by the end of 2026. Part 5, the legacy of discipline. The consensus on Takaichi's Japan is clear. It will not be a Truss-style disruption. Japan's institutional structure, its domestic investor base of banks and pension funds, and its history of responsible supplementary budgets provide a cushion against fiscal shocks. Banks sitting on roughly $3 trillion in cash are expected to re-enter the JGB market and act as an anchor, stabilizing the yields as they approach the 1.8% to 2% mark. The absence of derivative exposure, which means complex financial bets, also drastically reduces the risk of the sort of forced selling that caused the UK crisis. Sanae Takaichi's leadership is on track to embody the Meloni-style pragmatism. It may carry the ideological legacy of Abenomics, but it will be filtered through the structural constraints of political fragmentation and inflationary pressures. Instead of a glorious, destructive return to old ways, Takaichi's tenure is shaping up to be a new phase of cautious reform, balancing the weight of the past with the necessity of discipline in a post-deflation world. It's a quiet truth, a story of prudence winning out over ambition. And that, my friends, is the story of how Japan chose a steady path over a shocking one. The markets may have expected a storm, but the Japanese economy, like its new leader, seems to have chosen the quiet strength of the tide. You can rest easy knowing that the world's financial systems are, for now, safely anchored. Sweet dreams, and we'll see you next time.